Hello, my name is Leslie Hendrickson. I'm on the steering committee of the Newburyport Literary Festival, and we had a great in-person day here in Newburyport yesterday. We have a full day of events for our virtual day, so thank you all for being here. Before we get going, I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors at the Mass Cultural Council, the Newburyport Bank, and the Institution for Savings. Those organizations keep this festival going, and we're totally grateful to them this year and every year. So I am going to turn it over to our host, Terri Trespicio, who is the author of Unfollow Your Passion, How to Create a Life That Matters to You. Terri, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be part of this event, especially since it's new. It's like a new kind of thing that you guys are doing at Newburyport Literary Festival, and I am totally thrilled to be here. I'm also joined by one of our debut novelists, Daisy Florin, who's here with us. She's going to be helping me with the session. She's the author of My Last Innocent Year. Maybe you were lucky to see her yesterday when she did her reading, and you'll learn more about her as we go. I adore her.
Oh, I adore you. Thank you for having a copy of my book handy.
Please.
Of course, do not.
What do you think? Yeah. This is my first rodeo. Of course I come on.
Where's yours? Show us yours.
Yes. Oh, mine. Yeah, mine's here. Yeah. Mine's right here. Of course, I have it handy. So I want to jump in. I want to see in the chat, where are you in your own writing? Give me a temperature check. If there was one word you would use to describe your relationship with your writing as a complete entity, not any one necessarily, maybe it is a book that you're working on, but how do you feel about it? Do you feel distant? And we have a very active chat, by the way. Like, we will use the chat a lot today. Do you feel distant? Do you feel remote? Do you feel cozy and intimate? Do you feel romantic? Okay, flow state. I love that. Stalled, understood, exploring. Stuck in the middle. Yes, I get that too. Yes, I'd rather sink in deeply as I would like. That is the key. Yes. Isn't that funny how we go to traction, deeply, sticky, frozen, stuck? We experience our emotions and our state of writing and everything else through the body. We're going to be talking a lot about the body today because the body is critical for the writing, not the mind, not some abstract idea of talent, some kind of molecular DNA code that you think certain people were born with, which is not true. Maybe it's a matter of, hey, I just haven't had the time to do it and I want to be doing it more. Understood. There's always the question of what is keeping us from our work. But my guess is this: if you made time this weekend to be part of the Newburyport Literary Festival in any way, you went there, you read about it, you're here now, chances are your readers. Guess what? The people who don't like to read or write are not here. And that also tells me you're not only a lover of books, you're also writers. Whether you feel stalled or stuck, or whether you've been meaning to or wanting to, you are a writer because you're here. And because when you write, that is by definition what you are. You are drawn to story, as most humans are, but you in particular. And I believe that the only one risk of loving books and idolizing authors. Question? We better mute everyone because sometimes people popping in, we're hearing stuff. The only risk of idolizing books and authors is that, and trust, we don't idolize them enough. We want to celebrate books and authors, but we might begin to believe that they are different from you. We might begin to believe they're a different animal altogether. Now, artists and writers often identify as such because of the way they see it, culturally, personality, lifestyle choice, all those things. But barring all of that, people who love to write and do it are no different than people who don't do it, right? So the fact is, and I've just started to see it here in the chat, you have your own stories, plenty, more than you need. Quite literally, you are the author of your own life. Whether you decide to share your stories in a public way is a choice you make. It is work in its own right that you decide if you're going to do. You don't have to do it. You could write and never publish a thing. That's not the definition of writing. For those of us who have the urge, the itch to share our stories, there can be incredible vulnerability in that, which is why most people choose not to do it. And no one's saying that you have to. There are concerns, of course, What happens if I share? Well, how will it change my life? What if everyone hates me? What if no one cares at all? Which is usually the bigger fear. But don't fall into that trap, because the fact is, whenever we go, well, my story's not important, or who would care, blah, 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 that's ego talking. We are all, as humans, fascinated with story. We're fascinated with it. Story informs every aspect of our lives. We have important stories to tell that will resonate with other people and that could free another person. And that's why we tell them. You have no idea what your work could do. And frankly, it's not your job to know or predict or control. Your job, if you care to choose it, is to do the work. What this comes down to is craft. The act of putting our thoughts into words, actual words, and learning how to use those words and sentences and paragraphs and pages to the best of our ability so that we can channel true story and energy through it. Whether it's a true story or a fiction story, it doesn't matter. There's truth in story. And the way to do it well, how to do it so people are listening and reading, is not whether your story is important, but if the craft is there. That's why I see writing as a skill more than a talent. Now, I've been leading these workshops for years in this particular format, which you're going to learn. I do it because the method changed my life. I know for a fact it changed Daisy's life too. And it changed my relationship with my work and with myself. It has made me, and been identified as a writer since I was little. I did the whole thing. I entered the writing contest. I got my MFA, all the things. Doesn't matter. I did not trust myself with the work. It is not until, say, after I was 40 that I became, with this approach, more generous with my work, more wild and risk-taking with my work, a better listener, and a keener appreciator of craft. Today, you're going to experience this for yourself. And as we begin, please remember this: writing is not for other people. It is your birthright, and you don't need a degree to do it. Trust me on that. If you can read, you can write. When you get stuck, and you're going to experience this, you're going to have moments of that feeling of that, and I've seen it in the chat already, realize stuck is the reverberations of course, the critic, which is the internalized voice of culture, authority, and other people's ideas about what you should do and if you're any good at it. Ironically, school, which is the place where most of us learned to read, unless you were homeschooled or whatever, but for the vast majority of us, school was where we were given access to language and where it was restricted. It was where we were given words and told, do not break them, do not misuse them, do not do it wrong. And every time we did it wrong, we were told we did it wrong. Guess what? You don't trust anymore. It's one of the biggest ironies and crimes that education tends to put on us. Just is, because then we get stuck. Because if you ask me, there's no such thing as writer's block. There's just the desire to write and the desire to be right. And if your desire to be right is more powerful than your desire to write, you won't write, because you could never be totally right. So my goal for you today is not to figure out your book. It's not to leave here with a publishable piece. It's that you will have an experience that will send the blood coursing through your work again, so that you will feel like Daisy and I did when we met at our first Gateless retreat, alive and primed and more interested in the work than our fears about it. And more importantly, impatient to return to the work again and again. So with that, you are going to experience what this is. And first, because many of you are new to me and new to this method, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what it is and what it involves, because it requires certain, it requires a certain perspective. It also requires certain behaviors that we enforce here in this room today. What is the Gateless Method? It is a framework and approach. I did not invent it. It was created by a woman named Suzanne Kingsbury, who works with authors and leads in-person retreats all over the world in this method that she codified. It's an approach to creative work which uses writing and story to push past blocks and access your creative genius. How? By maintaining a pretty strict set of guidelines and rules for how we see, respond to, and create our work, as well as other people's work. This involves a radical and counterintuitive approach to feedback, the death of most people's writing, one that eliminates, and here we eliminate traditional criticism from the equation. So why is traditional feedback not helpful? Will you always get it? Yes. Will you have an editor, if you so choose, who will tell you what to do, what not to do? Yeah, you will. But in the beginning, feedback is not what you need. The problem is that your brain has a negativity bias. Well, it's not a problem. It's kept you alive. It's kept us all alive, but it also keeps us from getting creative because negative thoughts stick more. We're also taught, as I said, in school to believe that criticism is good for us. If it hurts, it must be good. This is a very slippery slope. You've also been taught to compete with instead of cultivate creative work. You always thought someone else is more talented, someone's better than you, and that's all we're told to do. And so we always are afraid we're going to lose. The result of this is what we call the squeeze. It's the contraction of that critic, of that self that makes you feel small, that makes you feel stuck, that makes you feel tight, like there's no room for you, and that there's nothing you can do, which of course is a temporary. Contractions are temporary. And the result, if you can counter that, is the expansion. Adam Grant's new book, Hidden Potential, which I recommend, he says in it, I've seen many people shy away from writing because it doesn't come naturally to them. What they overlook is that writing is more than a vehicle for communication. It's a tool for learning. So the point of writing is not the asset. It's not just the book. It's all the things. It's the fact that the people who write tend to know themselves a little better, have a little more clarity than those who don't. I know you know that. So that is why we go to the page, because that is where thoughts are made real. That is where we concretize them. That's how we know what's going on. Otherwise, it's just in your head, right? It's no surprise that we get stuck. As I said, no writer's block. Trying to figure out what to write is a losing battle. That's like trying to tie your shoelaces by thinking about tying your shoelaces. How's that happen? How's that working for you? It doesn't work. You'll figure it out your whole life. I'm trying to figure it out. No, you're not. Don't figure it out. You sit down and you start writing, and that is how it happens. Also, procrastination. We put it off. I understand that. I've done it. So have you. We don't do it because we're lazy and bad. These are kind of moral stances. We do it because we're avoiding pain, because we have come to associate the commitment of pen to paper with pain, with risk. So my goal today is to help ease you of that. Procrastination, Adam Grant says, is not a time management problem. It's an emotion management problem. So why we practice this method is to remove as much of the friction as possible and to associate the act of writing with pleasure, not pain. That's why I don't buy into and don't like to hang out with people who tend to moan and groan about how hard writing is. And I always want to say it's a privilege, and you are lucky to do it if you want to do it. But please don't bitch about it. Focusing on what works, works. That is the heart of this method. You are given a set of guidelines, which I'll give you, in this way where you know you're not going to be criticized or judged. What happens is this is what the research says. It's in the book. You can read about it. You decrease norepinephrine, which is associated with anxiety, right? Distraction. You free up your limbic centers. You begin to retrain your brain. You leave on a high note. It changes how you feel. You don't have to feel a certain way to write when writing can change how you feel. The rules I will go over quickly here, and then we'll go over them later when we need to use them. But I want you to see them just like I would show you how strong a lock is to ensure that you're safe in here. The rules are no disclaiming. We don't put down our work. We don't say this is bad, I'm bad, this is horrible, and I didn't have time, and da-da-da-da. We focus on what's working only. This is not flattery. This is attention to craft. No criticizing, questions, or suggestions. We do not ask questions of the author when they read their work. No clarifying questions. No, I didn't get it. No, you know what? This should be a screenplay. None of that. We stay on the page, which means when we're listening to someone's work, we don't reflect on our own lives. Meaning, if Daisy reads a piece about, a car accident, I don't say, oh my God, I also got in a car accident. Because now I'm making it about me. It's not about me. When you're with someone in their work, you stay with their work. And that's what we do. And when someone goes off the page, you can feel it. It feels like an ugh moment. And if it happens, then I'll just call attention to it. And we refer to the speaker. I don't say Daisy's piece. Daisy always does this. Daisy. I say the speaker, the narrator. Why? Because it separates the writer from the work, which is important. We need to see the work as separate. It is not you. Part of the magic of this is we're going to, and the bulk of this, which we're about to do, is you're going to do some writing. How do you write to a prompt? There is no wrong way. I will give you a prompt which is specifically chosen because it can be taken any number of ways. I do not care if you actually write to the prompt or don't. You are free to write about the opposite of what the prompt is. You could use the word, you cannot talk about, but the prompt is there to nudge you through one door. Otherwise, you're looking at a hall of 1,000 doors. How are you going to know which one to go through? So I give you a little nudge through one. You notice what catches, what flashes in your mind. When I give you the prompt, what is it? What happens? What happens in your brain? What do you remember? What do you see? Start with the concrete details, the weather, the texture of the clothing, the sound, the smell, whatever it is that pops up for you. Your body is ready to supply those. It has them stored. This is the hardest part, really. It's to trust and let go of the reins and follow the work. Let it go. What are you writing about? Don't analyze it and stop it. Just keep going. Oh, now I'm off to the races. I'm writing about my Uncle Bob again, right? Wherever. And keep going wherever it goes. What we're about to do is I'm going to guide you through a brief meditation. Actually, Daisy, would you guide us through the meditation part? I'm going to have you do that. Daisy's so good at it. So good at it. Then I will give you a prompt. Then you will write for about 15 minutes. Then we'll listen and practice feedback, and people will be, invited to share, or we'll call on people, which is often what we do. So let's take a beat for a moment. Put down everything. Do not have your phone, your pen, your whatever. You're going to write, but you're not going to do it right this second. We need you to get into your body because that is what you write with. So I'm going to have Daisy lead us through. So let's just sit. Let's just get settled in our seats. Put our feet on the ground, shake out our hands, roll our shoulders. Let's just get all that. You've been thinking and listening now a lot. So now I'm having you I'm about to shift gears on you. Right. And so, yeah, you got to be open to that and ready for it. And we let go of our smarty pants brains. We let it go. We understand everything we need to know. There's nothing else you need to know. Daisy, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Let's come into those bodies, imperfect as they are, achy and creaky, or maybe not. Maybe you're woke up feeling like a rose. But we are deciding to create this room together, this Zoom room, this really invented space that we have decided to create to focus on our work. So let's seal it off from everything else, everything that came before, everything you had to do to carve this time out for yourself. We are going to leave all those things behind. We will attend to them later. Take some deep breaths. Control the breath however it feels good to you. Maybe it helps to focus on it. Maybe it helps not to. But you want to plant your feet on the ground or some surface that grounds you. You are here. You are here. Feel whatever is supporting you, a chair, a sofa, a bed, the floor, reminding you that you are a body in space. And what you are about to create comes from a part of that body that you may not have thought about for a while. the back of your knees, the space between your shoulder blades, your pinky toe. Direct the breath there to those hidden spaces, whatever that means to you. Create space between your ear and your shoulder. Let those hands that do so much drop down if you can, as if there are little fishing weights on the tips of your fingers. And direct breath to all the space that opens up. Imagine your rib cage stretching like a levolor blind, a Venetian blind, opening up like that to let in space, air, light. Close your eyes if that is possible, and take a few quiet, centering breaths as we elect to create this space together.
Now, out of the quiet of that, I'm going to give you a prompt, and it's like throwing some breadcrumbs in the water. You're going to watch for what comes flying to the surface, and it's not your job to judge it or question it. Write it down. Just go. Again, does not have to be autobiographical. It can be if you want. It could be about you or your character or someone else. I want you to think about a time your pulse quickened. Maybe it was out of fear. Maybe something was happening and you felt your pulse shoot right through the ceiling. Or maybe you realized you were falling in love. Or maybe you were on the plane and realized you'd forgotten something. It can be the smallest thing. In fact, go for the detail. Don't aim for some big, huge thing to take on. I want you to focus on the moment. What does it feel like to have your pulse quicken? Is it exciting? Is it terrifying? Where are you? What are you wearing, or what is your character thinking? What are they doing? What are they eating? I'm going to set the timer now, and you're just going to go and run. Just run. At time your pulse quickened. Start writing. And we just bring it to an easy close. You put a note and say, oh, don't forget to say this. Come back to this. Leave the door open. You do not have to finish this. This is just the beginning. So put a little note there to leave the gate open so that you can run right back in there when you're ready. Now, what happens for the next part of this is the best part, because we get to listen to all that just sprouted up out of your brains with very little prompting and preparation, right? You didn't know you were going to do this today. And so maybe some of the writing took you by surprise. Maybe it became very light and funny, maybe it became very heavy. It's okay. We allow it to be what it is. We don't judge the work. It's not your job. And also, you're an unreliable narrator when it comes to your work. I don't trust your ideas about your work because you might say bad things about it. So what we'll do is I'm going to recap very quickly what the rules are for feedback, because I'm going to invite you to, read. And Daisy will gather if you could raise your hand if you'd be interested in reading, and then we'll also call on people because some people will never raise their hand and I don't want them to not get the chance. So some people will call on, but others we will call on you. And if you're like, oh, hell no, you just go, or you just say pass. It doesn't matter, but we just always want to make sure people get the chance. So Daisy, if you could queue up maybe the first 3 readers. Here are the rules. No disclaiming. I don't want to hear a word out of your mouth except for the first word on the page. We focus on what's working. So you read and then you are quiet and you don't say another thing. if you read. You don't comment, you don't respond, you're on mute. We don't criticize you. We tell you what we saw in it. And Daisy and I have been doing this a long time. So we'll start with that feedback to show you. But we want you guys to feedback too. But that's the beauty of the chat. So what we put in the chat adheres to these rules. So you don't spout off about random opinions. Not happening. You don't write about your own life here. You write, what did you hear in the work? This trains you to be a better writer because you're listening to the writing. Okay. We say on the page, we refer to the speaker or the narrator, not the person by name. Okay. Okay. So who is going to, I'm going to take some notes here. Who will be our first reader? Daisy, who's our first reader?
How about Whitney Doherty?
Whitney is our first. Oh, Whitney.
Picked at random. I picked at random. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Whitney.
Oh my God, Daisy, I was hiding. I didn't even raise my hand.
Okay, well, Whitney, it's totally up to you.
Yeah, it's totally
That's
up
totally
to you.
fine. It's totally fine. So just read for a while because it's a lot of pages.
Right? If for some reason you don't want to read part of it out loud, that's fine. But you just start with wherever you want to begin and you read through till you end whatever you wrote in the past few minutes.
Okay. My pulse quickened as I watched him walk toward me. He had been a small figure on the shore, small figure on the shoreline when he spotted us. He waved and made his way toward our group, lounging on our blanket on a lazy Sunday at the beach. As he drew closer, his body came into shape, sharper focus, and I began to have what I can only describe as an outer body experience. You see, I knew this person, had known him for years. He was my best friend's ex-boyfriend, and the reason we were lying on this beach. This was a place we had gone. He had gone for many summers and introduced her to, and she had brought me. We'd rented a house that summer and were having a great time escaping the city heat. As he approached, I wondered why I was having such intense feelings. After all, I was a pretty avowed lesbian, and rarely did my pulse activate at the sight of a man. I guess I realized it wasn't the man, but the energy in that was walking toward me. It's like my future awaited, and I knew it. And yet it was complicated, and of course I tried to play it cool. After all, I was a recently turned 30-year-old who'd already lived in New York for 8 years, and playing it cool was a finely tuned craft. In order to survive the mean streets, you had to be tough. But here I was, a messy woman lying on a beach waiting to meet my destiny as he arrived at our blanket. "Hello," he said. I found no words in response, staring up at him from under my beach hat. The sun was strong and I squinted. Squinting was good to mask fear. My face told no tale other than a smushed up mess of lines and wrinkles. I looked to my best friend who was speaking with him with ease. It was clear she had no challenging feelings and gave herself permission to engage with no boundaries, while I stayed mostly quiet, wondering why my identity was being thrown such a curveball, and I didn't know what to make of it. He invited us all over to dinner at his house later that night. I was game, but my friends were all returning to the city on the late afternoon ferry. I was unsure what to do, so after the brief conversation and escorting my friends back to our house so they could pack up their bags for return, I sheepishly wandered around so confused in my thoughts. I inquired to my best friend why she had not considered dating this person, and she said they were just friends. She was single and very interested in meeting someone, but she made it clear that this was not the one. And in retrospect, I guess I was asking permission, but of course I didn't know this at the time. Writing was a struggle in terms of reading it. It was unclear of my handwriting.
Is that the end, honey?
It goes on, but I've just paused from there because it's enough of a, it gets a little harder. I get a little messier.
Oh, okay. That's all right. That's all right. Let's
Yeah.
go with that. We have a beautiful passage here to work with. So what we listen for what we love. Now, this author just wrote it. We just heard it. I don't expect people to remember every detail but what we usually do when we're listening, and it's a practice to put it in the chat, is, when you hear a line you like or a word you like, you put it in the chat, right? I will say, and I'll start, Daisy, what I love is the suspension, and the backstory is so artfully brought in while the man is moving toward the blanket, right? Yeah. That's that art of that the person, the figure coming closer, literally getting bigger, and his presence on the page also gets bigger because we're getting, while he's walking, we have time for the flashback and the context, and the strange feelings that she experiences, because she says is not usually my jam. I'm not usually into this, but why am I having? So we see the speaker kind of puzzling at her own physical response, which is not intellectual choice. And I loved that. I loved that like that setup there.
Yeah.
Daisy?
I mean, like a story needs to have a reason to be told, right? Like, what is the occasion for the telling? And often it's a break in a routine, a record scratch, a dropped stitch. And this is definitely that. This is, you can hear that record scratch of this man is walking, and I don't know what this is. So we are immediately, we understand why this story is being told. And exactly that use of flashback. A lot of times stories, there's a very clear scene setting. We're on the beach, it's Sunday, but we need some context, and it is seamlessly woven in here as this man is walking. And in this short round of time, we have scene, we have dialogue, we are jumping ahead in time to like packing up the house and what's going to happen at dinner later. And there's no stubbed toe. We're never confused where we are.
I love the fact of how the character herself, the protagonist here, is painted.
Yeah.
You know, how she says,
you really like it. I know. Yeah.
Oh, can you mute everyone, Jill? I can't. I usually go through and see what mics are open. I just mute them, but it's not giving me the power to do that. So could you go through and do that, or Leslie? When she says, playing it cool, like I was a 30-year-old having lived in New York City for 8 years, like playing it cool is, I kind of got that down. It's a craft. She doesn't say I was this way and then I was this way. She's like, everything about her is being challenged, right? She's feeling the strong attraction to a man, and the very cool version of her is being undone.
Yeah, a messy woman. Someone put that
in
the chat. A messy
woman.
And
yes.
I loved that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So that is, I'm looking in the chat too. So
yeah.
In
retrospect, I was asking for permission. So that we talked about that in my session yesterday, how that's also like time travel again, just bringing us out to, there is a time that this story is being told, which is not the time that the action is happening. There's a knowledge that is being imposed on this story.
But see, it's just beginning to open, the tension and the excitement. And that is where, where do you write? Where does the energy go? Well, we know we're going to this dinner. Conveniently, no one else can make it. So except us, we can make it. We'd like to be there. Thank you very much. Fantastic, Whitney. I'm so glad. What days?
Yeah, no, we're coming to the dinner. We're all there.
We're coming. We're all coming, by the way. We're not getting on the ferry. Thank you so much for going first. I love that. Let's go to, I see Evelyn Wright's hand.
I just wanted to say, spoiler alert, we're still together. 26
Oh
years.
my gosh, I love it. Thanks, Whitney.
Oh my.
Evelyn, you're up, honey.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Daisy. I said queue up and I'm jumping the line. I don't know. Sorry. Go ahead, hon.
All right. I'm thinking of standing on the street in Denver that last night in October with Justin and Charles, when I had fallen in love with both of them and with our teacher, Margaret, and with embarking on this new path. We were walking along the side of a park west of the trendy Highlands neighborhood where Charles then worked. We didn't know then that he would be out of that job by the next time we were in town. It was a warm, pleasant, easy evening. Other groups of people were passing us on the street, though we were now off the edge of the gentrifying part of town. We had taken an exploratory tour through Highlands, and they had discovered that I was in love with community gardens, so Charles pointed out all of them. He told us about the time he did valet parking here and worked in the ice cream shop there and drove a party bus through all of it. Then we had dinner and we walked and kept talking and talking as we had all weekend, but now with this extra sweetness because it was the last night. And then I was telling them about when I lived in Cambridge many years ago and how I'd had hand injuries, which upended my life by making me unable to write, and how I studied quantum mechanics and Tai Chi and magic looking for a way out. And Charles asked me, wow, what was that like? And there it was, the question I'd been waiting to be asked for years, the question my erstwhile partners had never asked. I didn't know exactly that was why I had to leave them, why I had to say, yes, there's plenty of good here, but I have to admit that I'm actually miserable and I have to leave. It was because they couldn't say, wow, that sounds intense for you. What was that like? It seems so simple and so tiny, but somehow it wasn't available to them. Somehow they were so lost in their own worlds, their own ideas and self-management, their own battles over their right to exist, their own quests for perfection, that they couldn't hear me. They couldn't say, wow, I feel the impact of that. And then be curious. Tell me what that was like for you. And that's what we had seen Margaret model, and was how we had listened to each other. And we had listened to each other range so deeply and with so much fascination that we had in 3 days reached that curiosity about each other. Was it enough? What does that mean? Enough for what? Not enough for me to know what would propel them both off the path we had started together, or to be curious about it rather than be focused on how much I didn't want to lose the magic we shared together. And not enough not to make Charles the symbol of what I hoped for in my new life, to begin to obsess about reconnecting with him and then explode with discomfort once we were together again. Not enough to keep me from going back into judging his experiences and what they meant for me and my decisions. And yet it was enough to set me firmly on this path, which has been so fruitful for me, and to stay in touch with both of them, to have a lovely visit with Charles each time I'm out there, to become curious about him again. Now that I no longer place him instrumentally in my life, I'm able to just marvel at how he sees the world, and to offer my perspectives at time and mostly support him. I see in my life I could do better with this curiosity. Remembering that incredible magic now, how thoroughly, ecstatically delightful it was to be asked, how was that for you? I want to be able to give that to people, and I want to be open to be transformed by the listening.
Oh my God. It's so gorgeous. Loved. Oh, what a rich study in perspective, right? There's stuff happening. Things have to happen. There's movement. There's falling in love. There's the pulse quickening around a discovery. But it's really also a long game of understanding relationships and the speaker's feelings about that. And it's made real in that moment. There it was, a question I've been waiting to be asked for years, and how forgiving and kind the speaker is. And that's just the way of this particular speaker. It's not a moral stance, right? But the speaker says, she doesn't say, oh, well, they were such jerks that they couldn't even, but so selfish, right? She says, somehow it wasn't available to them. There's such kindness there. I also love the list of the jobs, right? You get a sense, it compresses time. And we see the guy valet parking, the ice cream shop, the party bus. Like, it's so fun, right, Daisy?
I love that party bus. I don't know. It's if this is a detail that was made up, it's a perfect detail. And it sort of situates us in these. What are these? These are people sort of, maybe they're young or they're just sort of in between things, because these are the kinds of jobs maybe you have when you're in between. I loved the opening that I didn't quite get down, but Denver, that last night in October. Justin and Charles, I'd fallen in love with both of them. I mean, talk about opening me up. Well, that's an opening, another record scratch, right? This moment, and it can be distilled to this last night in October. And also, I was in love with Community Gardens. That's such like a character piece, and this really like lingering over, wow, what was that like? The weight of that very simple question. And then this kind of wandering into why other people hadn't asked that question, what that question means, and then to bring it back around at the end, which maybe has moved forward in time, but that whatever happened with this relationship, which has taken turns and is more complicated than maybe we were set out to believe at the beginning, but that the narrator wants to ask that question of others, wants to embody that.
There's the generosity.
Herself. Yeah.
I mean, that line, basically, I was like, this is the most gateless line I've ever heard in my life. I want to be transformed by the listening, which is what she gives to us because we get to listen to her. One line I really loved was talking and talking as we had all weekend, but with this extra sweetness. It's like someone go, well, how did she come up with that? You did not have time to ponder phrasing. It's just how it emerges. And the problem is not that we're not good enough to come up with stuff. We block it all the time. What we're seeing is the fullness of just having it come out in this beautiful rush. And really just, it's extraordinary. Now, I also know from being in many, many, many of these, that anyone who was going to read might go, oh, well, F that. I didn't mine would not be called a study in perspective. Stop. Everyone just wrote a first draft, and there is such craft naturally in what you're doing. It's not, don't question yourself here. This is what the work does, is what we do in this work, is that we have to look for the gold. We find it. We just go, look, it's right here. Because sometimes we're too close to it when we write it. We can't see it. I would love to give our organizer, Jill, a chance to read, because she is the reason we're here. And I'd love to hear from her too.
Thank you. The drive to the beach was about 10 minutes, plus extra time to look for parking. Not easy on a busy, beautiful summer day where looking for a parking spot was sport. She didn't have much in her beach bag: sunscreen, headphones, a towel, and the desire to change her mood. Submerging into the cold New England ocean water was the best way she knew how to rid herself of the heavy covering that hung on to her through the winter months, the darker days, and the insistent chatter her brain cultivated, it seemed, until that stinging water reset her. After trudging through the hot sand to an open spot on the slanted shore, she placed her belongings down and looked out onto the open water, churning, tiding, moving, relentless. It was just what she needed to get out of her worn-out head. There had been summer storms the day before, so the ocean was especially lively, pinging her radar that without a lifeguard, she needed to be especially mindful. There it was, the voice inside her head, trying to stop her joy by telling her to be careful, keep your guard up, consider if the risk is worth it. Today it was worth it. She needed that dunking, that pulse quickening and heart racing to remind her she was a living being who could exist without them all. She was in charge of her mind and body. She could make choices about what to do with those two ephemeral chunks of her essence. She began the short descent to the water's rolling edge and continued on. Next to her were two preteens, sisters it seemed, jumping and wading in the more shallow area. She noticed where the waves were breaking and where the water's surface was slightly more calm, and made a plan, there was that voice again, to get to that spot, the spot where the cure was. As always, nature has another plan, and getting to that spot of serenity where the grime and angst melts away was more challenging. That day, the waves knocked her down. They weren't the floaty, supportive waves where you lie on your back and close your eyes and let the sun heal you. These waves meant business. The first time she fell, she laughed, a bit embarrassed at the show the shore stayers were witnessing. She got up, her legs buckling under her until she could right them, to give reaching that blissful soak another try. A few seconds of freedom sated her until the wrestling ocean took her out again, pushing her down. One of the teens was there, asked if she was okay, agreed that the waves were rough that day. She was okay. She didn't care who saw her fall because she knew she'd use her strength to get up and try again next time.
Beautiful. We got a lot of beach. Isn't that weird how that happens? We get a lot of beach vibes here.
We're in a beach town. We're in a beach town.
That's true. That's right.
Uh,
Oh God, Daisy,
you
go
know,
first.
there were a couple of things here that I feel were words that came because this was written quickly, and I love them so much. Churning, tiding, moving, relentless. I don't know if tiding is a word, but it is. Maybe it is. Now it is, and it's fantastic. And also the worn out head. Never heard that that adjective with that noun put together, and I feel like that is the kind of thing that you write in a container like this. Just like, it's a worn out head, you know, whereas if you labored over it, you might think, oh, it's not really right, it's a worn out head, can you describe, you know? So it's gorgeous. And I loved that the waves are almost characters. They're not the nice floaty waves. These waves meant business. So the waves are characters in the piece. And just the way this narrator is so self-aware, you know, should I be worried about the waves? Oh no, she's trying to stop her joy again. She just needs to move forward and to quiet that voice that is so exhausting and is what has likely brought her here.
Yeah, this is what we're looking at is a woman goes to the beach and walks into the water. That's what happens here in the scene. She's not alone though, not just because there's two girls there, but because she's got the voice of that critic that's cutting off her joy, yammering at her. There's an old chatter in her head that's been going on all winter that she's trying to literally wash away. There are the waves which have no words. They are wrestling her. They are muscling her. There's almost something like a surrender to the physical here because the intellectual has just drawn her out. Like she's flattened by it. And now she wants to be, you know, caught up in it. It's kind of seeking out this connection with nature, really, to revive what we do to ourselves. And yeah, it is dangerous, but she gets knocked down, she laughs, and she's going to get back up again. So it shows, even though she's painting a picture of a character who's worn out, very persistent, relentless, right? Her ceaseless and unflagging effort is there. And I see a lot of great comments. In fact, if you would like to save the chat, you can do that, you know? You go over to, where is it? Jill, oh yeah, 3 dots. At the bottom of the chat, there's like a little commenty, an emoji thing, and then 3 dots. No, that's not it. Anyone else know where
I don't see the 3 dots right now.
Maybe you don't have it as,
maybe you don't have the 3 dots. In the chat window, there's a couple icons, and then on the right, the 3 dots.
Oh, I see.
It's actually up at the top. Save chat.
Top. It says the Gateless Workshop. There's 3 dots there. You can download the chat if you would like to review it later. Let's go to Leslie Stoller.
I just want to interrupt for a minute. I'm going to have to leave in a few minutes.
Oh, that's fine, honey.
And so I wanted to thank you.
Thank you, Anne.
Thanks.
Thank you for saying it. Very sweet.
And I'm not good with chat, or I would have put some more comments.
That's okay. You're also like in a car and everything else. So.
Yeah, I'm in transition to another lit festival thing. That's the challenge.
Listen, she's very busy. Very
okay.
Busy.
Anyway, but thanks.
Thank you. All right, Leslie, you're up.
It bounced hard off the solid surface. I wasn't sure what it was at first, simply a boom as my pulse quickened. I peered out the window to see kids playing on the basketball court 3 stories below my hotel room. It was a blustery day, and the treetops that grew up the 3 stories were moving rapidly outside, the gusts swaying them back and forth, the light green of their new leaves catching the filtered light peeking through what appeared to be, at a glance, a solid gray sky. As I watched for a moment, solidness vaporized, morphed into cloud formations rolling past in the same gusts of wind swaying the trees outside my window. How many times had I looked outside the window, grateful I'd landed in room 318? The middle, the guy said at the front desk when I inquired about where to find the staircases and if they were accessible. Yes, and yes. I'd stayed at many hotels where you could exit out the stairs, but there was no way in from the ground floor. Never figured out why. Security, the area didn't necessarily feel dangerous to me, but what did I know? It was a hotel, so I was only passing through, perhaps for a night or three. Maybe it was lack of use. After all, who but a crazy person uses the stairs when there is a perfectly good elevator to use instead? I don't know. All I know is that I prefer, once luggage is safely tucked into its spot in the room, to use the stairs, both to go up and down. Make me feel more alive and connected to a place, the stairs. Sometimes they are finished off and nice. More often, they are simply, well, not an afterthought, as I think they are required in any hotel or commercial space building. Yet a neglected child or or conceived as purely utilitarian for emergencies only.
Sorry, hang on. My cat is freaking out. I'm going to mute myself and go to Daisy.
I love I meant to mention this before when I hear the phrase pulse quickened, which I think has happened in, I don't know if every piece, but several of the pieces. And I just love that as a connective thread. We always say that you can ignore the prompt if it doesn't speak to you, or there's something else you want to work on in that moment. But I love when writers at least give it a nodding glance. This was fascinating. It was such a close observation in the beginning of these trees and the wind and the blustery day. And then this real specificity of room 318, wanting to be in the middle. And this idea of wanting to always use the stairs. It makes me feel more alive and connected to the place. That's something I've never heard said before, and I love to hear it. It's the kind of bit of characterization that if this was a novel or a piece of fiction that is so revelatory about a character, but something you wouldn't normally think to include as a bit of characterization. Does this character take the elevator or the stairs? It was really a fascinating thing to ponder. Jill said stay a night or three. And I loved that. Also, not a night or two, but a night or three.
Yes, that was unexpected. Yeah. And I agreed about the stairs. Everything, every decision, every choice reflects on the character, right? Paints the world of that. Because we know why she likes the stairs. She says she likes being connected, but there could be another story about someone who will not get in an elevator, right? So it's different. But whenever you're wondering, how do I make, first of all, I'm going to say character, knowing that it could be you as the real character in a very real essay. Don't skip the details that are idiosyncratic and quirky, and you think, who cares about that? Well, everyone to know what, that's not the point. The point is we get to learn something about that person.
Yeah, and there's something that I've been told when writing fiction is that character moves plot. So to have plot come out of characterization, this is the kind of characterization that might move a plot. There might be something that comes later, not to go off the page, but just as a bit of craft advice. This might be something that if it stayed in a piece might reverberate later or something,
Yes. Yes.
And you kind of,
the murder happens on the stair. Like
the murder happens
later, it's
like,
right. You'll be in an interview and they're like, how did you come up with that stair idea? How'd you come up with it? Be like, it started in this one thing. I didn't even know how I use it. And then it just kind of like you're writing, if you tend to it like this wild crafted garden, like you don't know where those things will take you. So we got to be careful not to edit them out as we're writing. If it comes up, write it down,
Right. It can come out later if everything is flexible and can get moved around.
Yes. What about Dara Crowfoot? Pass. Nope, she's not. Well, thank you very much. Not me. Jules Means. I was literally looking at you before you raised your hand, Jules. I have an energetic connection. I know who's going to be up next. Well, sometimes. Jules, you're up. Up, Jules, we can't hear you, hon. You got to unmute.
There it is. Okay.
There you go.
Is that better? Okay.
Yep.
In the office at Borders, where I had just been hired, I was being introduced to other people. The man got up from his desk in the corner and walked over. He reached to shake my hand. Our eyes met and locked on. I felt I recognized him. Something swirled up my arm, into my shoulder, and around me. I was dazzled. I almost lost my balance. Later, we talked about it. We had both felt it. This was the end of my old life and the new beginning of my new one. Everything changed forever. Nothing was ever the same from that moment on for either of us.
Oh, what a beautiful moment. I love the breath of that moment. Thank you, Jules. We get place, time, space, kind of, right? Office at Borders. I had just been hired. We're told where we are, right? We orient and ground the reader there. And I'm being introduced to other people, and this man gets up and says, shake my hand. All very normal. We can see it happening. And then the power of that in the writing to illuminate, right, the moment. And it's so unique, and it becomes visual. It's sensory, right? Shake my hand. It's not like, and I just felt an amazing connection. No, something swirled up my arm, my shoulder, through me. Like it's like ding, like she just stuck a fork in an outlet kind of thing, you know?
Dazzled.
And notice she says it without describing him at all, right?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, the occasion for the telling, the record scratch, the drop stitch, this was the end of my old life.
Oh,
I mean, it doesn't get more momentous than that.
And I love that statement too, like the strong statement of like, this is what this happened. Like we don't need to sort of tiptoe around it if it's a thing, you know?
Right. It was the end. It was over. Here we go.
It was the end. Now, hang on. I know people have questions. We are nearing the end of this. I would be remiss if I didn't explain now. Well, because I'm glad if put in the chat a word. And first of all, if you did not have a dreamy experience, maybe you were like, whoa, this is scary. And I felt up. It's okay. You weren't supposed to be changed as a person today. Like, it's okay. We have to make sure we're just tuned into what it's like to do it. So how did this feel for you? Put it in the chat. If you had to use a word to go, maybe it's curious, maybe it's scary, maybe it's freeing, as Eileen says. Hard, okay? Hey, it's not necessarily the easiest thing in the world, which is why not everyone does it. Fluid, earnest, refreshing, enjoyed being the container, inspired, and in the very sense of inspired, breathing in, right? Now, the thing is, Daisy and I, we do this with each other. We will write together. We'll go on retreats. We lead stuff. And we also lead sessions in something I run called the studio. And I would be an idiot if I didn't at least tell you what this is. Because, first of all, there's people here who are already in it. But the idea is this. This is a tester. This is why we did this. We just kind of came, we wanted people to love to read and write, to experience it. But it does not have to be once a year, once in a while. You can live here if you want. So something to think about is, well, what if you could? What if you could, freely and safely explore your voice and creativity, get unstuck? How? By thinking about it? No, by coming and writing, by sharing your stories and ideas, getting real-time feedback. Sometimes, right? Breaking ground on a brand new project, gaining momentum and flow. By the way, the feedback is radical and it's different, but I want to make very clear that you getting feedback is not the thing that moves the needle in the work. It feels great. We all love it. If we wrote something, we want people to hear it. Yes, but be careful about expecting or, assuming that our feedback does the work, because what I want for you more than anything is for you to have agency. You get to know your work. You get to decide. So you can live with us online if you want. It's called the New Role Studio, or Studio for short. It is unlimited access to Gateless writing sessions every week, all month long. Why is it the studio? Because to me, it's where artists gather, right? It's where we bring our best ideas, our collaborative spirit. It's where we come to do the work. It is a membership-based program. It is all access. It is Gateless certified. All the instructors have been certified through the same approach, Daisy, me, and three others actually for now. It is always critic-free. It is always D-bag-free. Because guess what? D-bags don't want to hang out and listen to each other's stuff and talk about how wonderful it is. They tend to filter themselves out real easy. Oh, trust. I see them coming a mile away, and they come through once, and I go, bye now. We will never see you again. Your studio membership includes unlimited access to all 13 sessions a month, exclusive access to bonus sessions, which I do all the time because I want to bring in other people and other voices, the chance to occasionally, right, share your work, get feedback, tools and strategies to up-level your work, a curated library of resources and recorded workshops you can access all the time. And this is the vibe. And you're looking around, the people in this room, there are many of them who have written with me for years. It's a community of like-minded people who are not out to make you feel bad or show that they're better than you. That is not how we roll. Our bonus sessions cover a range of things. I mean, we're going to have one with a woman I know who's a kind of an intuitive, who has a whole way of looking at your cycles of growth and creativity. We've also done book publishing sessions and craft sessions. And I'm going to run them more regularly, editing sessions. How do you apply Gateless to editing? How do you do that? Also, I have a program called 30 Days on the Page, which you automatically get access to, which is a month's worth, or 30 days, you can use them over and over again, worth of audio writing sessions to go. So you click on it on your phone or wherever, and it's like they're 15, maybe 20 minutes. You listen and you do the writing on that recording. You listen and I go, okay, go do it. I'm sitting here waiting for you. And then when it's done, I go, okay, you're done. And then you're done. So you know you have a playlist for the day, right? To do your writing at a cafe. Great way to take it with you. How it works, it's really easy. It's a monthly thing. You pick the sessions, you join us. They're an hour long. You attend as many as you like. If you don't know these people, of course, I won't matter to you yet, but Daisy teaches every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Wednesdays with Sarah Montana, although lately Christina Dexter's filling in as Sarah Montana's on deadline. And Thursdays at 7 p.m. with the sweetest woman in the world, Serena Eastman. And then I do the first Monday of every month, and I do bonus sessions too. Great if you feel frustrated, you want to do more writing, you don't have time to write, but need to, want to, can't seem to get started, keep losing momentum, want to be part of this, and love this vibe. As I said, they're all trained. Every one of us has been through the training. Now you know Daisy. We also have Sarah Montana, who is in the Screenwriters Guild. She writes Hallmark movies. You've probably seen a lot of them. And this is Serena Eastman, and we also have a few others. Now, let me tell you about cost, because that's a big factor, right? You have to have budget to be investing your time in these things. Typically, my Gateless style programs have run anywhere from 200 or more for like a single full day, or thousands for ongoing programs. That's how it was, because those were very small rooms. You're paying a premium for that. My goal with this was to make it easier, accessible, so you could get the writing done and not have to make a big commitment unless you want to. So if we say that each session would be worth it, let's go with the lowest, $50 a session at the lowest. Let's just multiply that by 13. That's $650 a month. If I were positioning it there, I would say, well, $497 is a great deal. If I cut it in half, I'd say $248 is a great deal. That's $20 a session. You would pay more for a spin class. But you know what's better than $20 a session? $7 a session. I've paid more for a latte, and I say that partly embarrassed, but true. You want oat milk, you're going to pay through the nose. Register for the studio today, and you can lock in your membership for just $97 a month. It is an intro rate. I cannot guarantee it's going to stay here, but if you sign up now, first of all, cancel anytime you want, but you will lock in for this rate. It will not change. If you go, well, I don't know, if you go to 1 or 2 a month, you basically gotten your money's worth. But if you come once a week, twice a week when you feel like it, great. Also, if you sign up with us before midnight tonight, you will be entered into a drawing to get the winners. 5 of them will get copies of both of our books. So you'll get both. Signed, by the way. So there it is, territrespicio.com/studio. That is where you go. If you have any questions, you email me. But here's the thing. If you go, well, I'm already in a bunch of things, I don't have time for another thing. I'm not asking for your time. This is not a commitment I'm asking you for. I'm guarding your time. You're paying to guard your time. It's for you. Either your work or your project or the urge to write, either it is a priority or it is not. I'm not here to tell you it should be. Maybe this is all you can manage is a Sunday a year. Fine, we will see you next year. But if it is something you want to do, it will not happen if you do not make time for it. Here's some of the things people have said. Really wonderful. I can't read it because there's stupid things in the way. I I signed up for studio thinking I would spend my time revising my book. I wanted the dedicated time on my calendar, but what I found was so much more. It has reminded me of how much I love writing, and to be honest, how well I write, which I love. This one from Ricky. I've unlocked stuff from within that I didn't even know was there. It's really fired me up to write more, to unlock more, and remove the goddamn filter. Danny says, I feel like I've stepped onto holy ground. Writing, listening to others, and sharing. I feel so alive. I continue to be amazed at what comes up just by showing up. And it's true. You come and it'll happen. If you show up, you can fall in love with your writing again. I don't care if you publish a book. It doesn't actually matter if you do or don't. You'll write a million things. You'll pitch a million things. Who knows? But if you don't love the writing, it will not get done, or you'll do it and hate yourself. And I don't think those are great options, personally. Not the best. Yeah. So here, what questions do you have for us? And it can be anything. It can be about practice. It can be about, anything about the writing practice. It can be about studio. Also, if anyone's here who's in studio, and I know there are, if there's anything you want to share, I'm happy to have you share. But Daisy, other questions? Did you see anything come up in the chat?
Julie, can you explain your questions? Is Studio Zion? I think maybe that was it.
What?
Maybe she meant Zoom only.
Oh, Zoom only.
Oh, no,
sorry.
It's not. It's on Zoom, so it's virtual.
Yes.
We don't have an in-person one yet. I imagine we'll do an in-person event at some point, but they're all virtual. They are live, and you come live. There are not replays of every single one because there's so many, only of the bonuses. And by the way, no, it is not only for fiction.
Right.
It is anything. People come. They come because they're like, I have to write an email to my list this week, or I have to do an academic essay, and it's feeling rigid to me. So I need story, or I'm doing a talk. I just want a place to get my thoughts out. Or maybe you just had a relationship end and you're like, I want to process this. It's for whatever you want. It is your time to use.
Yeah. And I would say people, I think people use it less for fiction maybe than for memoir pieces or whatever. I don't really know, because the important thing is that we treat everything as if it is fiction.
That's right.
That's a part of the way we protect the container. So we don't assume that anything written here is true.
Question for Jessica Chance. Hello, it's so lovely to see your face. Oh my God, I saw you. I was like,
see you too.
That's my Jessica Chance.
Yes, indeed, Terri. And I put training in the question. I'm like,
what did you mean by that?
Isn't the right word. Like, more organized the space. And I think actually, Daisy mentioned a little bit about focusing on all the writing as fiction and not nonfiction. But yeah, any clarity would be fine.
Yes, and here's the thing: people who love to write like to write a lot of things. Sometimes on a random day, you're like feeling a haiku mood. Who knows? But I think that you write what comes up, and sometimes a path opens up that you're writing about shit that didn't happen. And you're like, I guess it's fiction today. I mean, sometimes I'll start out in something that feels real, and then I go, oh, no, it's going over here. The magic of it is the generating. So sometimes I'll write a thing and I'll pull out a paragraph. I go, this could be in an email I do, because I have an email list, right? That goes, I'll say, oh, this would be good for an article. I want to write an article about that. I'd never thought about that before until I wrote it out. And now I want to write about it. And I go, I wonder who's going to, it's me in my email. Sure. Another time I go, oh, now that's going to happen to Susie Q, who is the character in this novel. She's going to have to deal with that one. So I like to create the stuff personally, and I know Daisy feels the same, and then see where it wants to go. Instead of thinking, as I tell people to do, being too asset minded. We're like, what box does it go in? Does it go in the nonfiction or the fiction? Yeah. Forget genre. Genre was invented by people who organize bookstores.
Yeah. And I think the idea of a studio is a great, right? Like, I'm not a visual artist at all, but I would imagine an artist might walk into a studio and paint a thing and not know if it's going to be part of a bigger piece or a still life or a tiny little thing. So
that's the true artistry, is can you allow the work to reveal itself to you? That is.
And the prompts are open enough that you can take them any direction. And I always say you can also ignore them. If you're like, we used to have a guy who worked in like financial services.
Yes,
his name. And he wrote a lot of not the blogs, but lists and emails. And so he would always have a little.
Yeah, he was trying to find a story to tell his email list, who are his clients and prospective clients. So he'd write about a marathon he ran. He goes, oh, you know what? That really connects to my work. And then he'd use it for that. So we're stitching and stitching this wonderful fabric. What you turn it into later is up to you. But I really want to thank you and thank Jill specifically. Jill Gross for having us here. This is so special.
Amazing.
And to Leslie for hosting too, and to the Newburyport Literary Festival for making this a first time. We'd love to see you, and please reach out with any questions. Jill?
Thank you both so much. This was amazing. Appreciate everyone's time. So happy so many people were able to join us, and thank you to the Literary Festival for hosting.
Great.
I just also want to pop in and say thank you all for joining us. This was the first time we've done a workshop at the festival, and it was a really great experience. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.